Hi guys, this is the next installment in our SPC videos. So if you haven't already watched, have a look at the installation and also the programming video that were the two previous videos to this one. So this is just a quick update showing you the more advanced features of the SPC panel. So let's get right into it. Okay, this is a follow-up to our previous SPC video on the operation and programming of the system. Today we'll be looking at more of the advanced features of the system and product. Again, we'll log on with our web browser with our engineer username and password of 1111, haven't updated that as yet, and we'll go straight back into our full engineer mode. Under configuration and under advanced, we have a number of features that we can enable on the system. So I want to set up a few things. So I would like to, on my warehouse reader, that when the system is disarmed, the green bezel light on it remains on, and when the system is armed it turns red. So in order to do that we need to add what we call a few triggers, and we'll create two in this case, one for when the warehouse system is armed and one for when it is disarmed. So we'll start up a new trigger and we'll call this warehouse unset. In our case, we're not assigning this trigger to a calendar, nor are we giving it a time limit on when it or how often it can occur, or the number of seconds that it must be true in order to activate. All we're doing is adding a very simple trigger. We'll go through I'll go through some of these and highlight them now. A trigger could be any door or any zone activation or secure or trouble condition. It could be any door operation. It could be a system output operation, or in our case it will be an area output. We'll come back to that in just a second. It could be a system function. It could be a user or a user profile function. I don't have any expanders, so there'll be nothing here. A communication option, which is the FlexC protocol communication paths, or for delayed set on an area. In our case, for now, we want to start a trigger that when the warehouse is, I think I said unset, so when it is unset, we'll go save. So warehouse unset, our only trigger is warehouse unset is on. We can add more triggers to this, but for us, all we want is to save this. We'll go back to our trigger. We'll add a new trigger. We don't really need two triggers for this function, but to ensure that it only fires when the system is armed or disarmed, I'm going to create two different triggers for this. So when the warehouse is now set, we'll add a trigger, area output, warehouse, and the terminology here is full set, and save, and save. So now we have two triggers here. In order to associate any of these functions to an output or a function within the panel, we have to associate our trigger with what we call a mapping gate, and we'll see how that operates. So we're going to add a mapping gate. I'll go edit here in a sec. So for our trigger, when our warehouse is unset, we want something to happen. I'll go back here and type in warehouse unset. So from here, I'll just save it. I'll go back and edit it now. We've got a warehouse unset mapping gate. The only time that this mapping gate will go off is when the warehouse unset is on, or a positive trigger. We can have an off trigger here as well, but for us, we can leave it like this. Or if we want it to only fire when the warehouse is unset, we could have warehouse unset is negative, and that will turn this output off, or this mapping gate off. So in our case now, it stands to reason that this mapping gate will fire when it is unset, and then stop firing when the unset is negative. We'll go back and we'll save that. As I said, we only really need the one, but for our purpose, I'm going to do a second one, which will be warehouse set. We'll assign a trigger. So when that's positive, on. When this is negative, off. We'll go back and save this. There's other functions that we can also do here as well. We can have it so we can locally enable or disable this mapping gate. We can also report whenever this mapping gate fires. We can assign a key on our keypad, and we can fire this mapping gate manually if we need to. We can also associate a timer on how long that mapping gate stays on for. In our case, both of the mapping gates that we've set will turn on and turn off when a particular function happens. But we could say, oh, geez, maybe I only want the arm light to come on for 10 seconds and then it will go back out. So they know that they've armed it from the reader, but then it goes back to its normal state. We could put a time in here and then change our trigger so there is no off time. It will be timed rather than controlled. We could also directly assign this to an output. So an output will trigger whenever this functionality occurs. We don't want that in this particular case. So let's complete this. So we've now done our mapping gates. If we go back to our doors, look at our door. So this is our warehouse door. Down the bottom here, we have the ability that says the reader green LED will operate when, in our case, the warehouse is unset, and now when the warehouse is set. We can save that, and I'll show you a video of this in a second, but the green LED on that reader will stay on all day, and then when the system is armed, the red LED will stay on. So that's one example on how a mapping gate in the system operates. I'm going to add an additional trigger. let's just say now that we have a auto gate control, maybe on the premises or in some area of the building. And rather than each user use their individual codes, we want to have a standard uniform code that when entered into a reader that has a keypad, that all it does, its only function, is to open that gate or to pulse that gate open. It's not used to arm or disarm any areas. It's not used to go through any doors. So what we can do, and I've set this up already, is under user profile, is I've created a gate profile. If we go in and have a look at that, it doesn't operate any of the areas. It has no authority to set or unset. It does absolutely nothing. Then we've added a gate code user. We've given it a code. We've associated it only with the gate profile, which means pretty much nothing happens on this system. They can't do anything currently by entering that code into a reader. But let's go into our trigger. We'll add, let's call it gate. We'll add a trigger. Now we can either do it via user, and we could say keypad pin gate code, and it would fire obviously when user 7 is operated. But let's make it more universal. We'll do it according to the profile that we've set up. So what this means now, we could add multiple gate code users, give them the gate profile, and all of those would have access to the gate without arming or disarming the system. So we're going to go save. In this case, go to our mapping gate, add a new mapping gate, call this gate, assign a trigger. So gate, when it goes positive, turns on. We're not going to do an off one here. We'll go back and we'll just do that for, let's do that for 2 seconds. So when a valid gate code is presented, it will trip this mapping gate for 2 seconds and then reset. And the gate, we're going to put on this expander here. So this is an output. We'll go save. We can go to our outputs and give this a name. You can see that it's associated with mapping gate 3 gate, and we'll go save. If we quickly went back here, went to our mapping gate, we could say, oh, okay, whenever that's fired, or I want to have the ability to go to any keypad and press the number 2 key, that now we can manage that here and hit save. So that's a good simple way of using your triggers and your mapping gates together. We also have the ability here of creating a virtual zone. A virtual zone is basically a mapping gate that acts as any zone on the system and can be programmed as such. So what it can do is really only up to your imagination, I guess. But let's just say now we have a scenario where we have in the office of this building, there is a storeroom, and on that storeroom door there's a reed switch, and then within that storeroom there's a safe or vault or something that also has a reed switch on it. We do have duress switches around the building, but let's just say we want an automated way that if we're getting held up that we could set off a silent duress alarm without actually doing anything. A potential way of doing this would be to say, well, okay, well, if the office is disarmed, and let's just say our normal procedure is we go into the storeroom, close and lock the door, and then we open the safe. That's our normal procedure. But if we're getting held up, how about we go into the storeroom, we leave that storeroom door open, and then we open the safe. And we want to send a silent duress if that storeroom door is opened and the safe door is opened. So let's now create a trigger based on that. Let's call it duress. We're going to add a trigger. So the first thing is probably not really needed, but area output office will be unset. We'll add another trigger that says our storeroom door is open. And we'll add another trigger that says our safe door is open. So now we have 3 triggers here. There's an option up here that talks about trigger operation. All of them have to fire, or any of them. Obviously we don't want any of them in this case, we want all. And we could also say, geez, how about we just add a timer? We'll put in a timer of 5 seconds that says office does need to be unset, the storeroom door and the safe door need to be open together for 5 seconds before this fires. Just in case we accidentally do it, we can immediately close one of these 2 doors to stop that trigger from occurring. So let's now go save. We'll create our mapping gate. We'll call that duress. We'll assign a trigger. So duress, when it's positive, we'll turn this mapping gate on. And for the sake of it, duress negative, we'll turn this trigger off. We could do that, or we could just assign a short period of time here, just enough to trigger the zone input. So we'll go save here. Now we'll go over and create our virtual zone. We can pick any unused zone number on the system. We'll leave it at 9. We're going to call this duress. It will be a hold up alarm in the office, and the mapping gate will be duress. If we wanted to, for the sake of the exercise, we could say that it's going to fire for a minimum of 2 seconds. And now go save. So now, with the systems disarmed, the storeroom door is open and the safe door is open for more than 5 seconds, Zone 9 will trigger a silent duress to our control room. So you can see virtual zones is a nice little option to have on the system. Once we've created our triggers and mapping gates, we can see our cause and effect filter here. In this case, the only one showing is the one mapped to a output, which is showing that it will control an output, its gate. That's the output it will control. We can also use our quick key number 2, and there's one trigger that triggers this particular gate. Our cause and effect configuration allows, I suppose, a little macro way of doing what we've just done. So straight away here we could assign an area and then assign a trigger for auto arm, disarm, etc. We can do the same with a door and assign a trigger as to when that door is locked or unlocked from here. So cause and effect, trigger and mapping gate is a good way to add functionality when you can't see a normal standard way of a checkbox of making a function occur as you would like. We also have the ability here under verification. We have our audio and video verification. Audio for us typically is coming from the microphone on select keypads that have a microphone fitted, and our options here, pre and post recording of that audio, and the ability to add IP cameras on the system, up to 4 of them, that can be used to verify, a zone alarm or any of that sort of activity. We go add to add our camera. We go edit in this case. I know that my first one, for example, is a car park. It's a generic thing. I'll put in my IP address. Port thing, password obviously needs to be the same as the camera. Our CGI command string, I know that this is correct for all of the cameras that I'm adding onto my system, so I don't need to change that. We have our post images, our pre-images, our post images, and the interval. So basically this will send 8 images at 1 second intervals before the alarm occurrence, 8 images 1 second interval after the alarm occurrence, and a live shot of the camera now. So we're basically sending a bunch of stills before, after, and during, and it'll update at about 1 or 2 second intervals typically. Just a note on adding cameras to the system. The short answer would be that any camera that has a CGI string available in a very low resolution, so something like 640 by 480, or maybe even a tad smaller, would allow you to add this camera onto SPC. Unfortunately today, lots of camera manufacturers, certainly with current models, might still say they support a CGI string, but unfortunately they'll only support it at a 720p resolution or higher, and that's not suitable for the SPC panel. You can be assured that if you have a Vanderbilt Industries camera, it will work with the system without you doing anything more than I'm doing now, and that's what I have on my system. There are a variety of HIC model cameras that will work, which is similar to the ones that we have here. For any other camera model or make, you would need to test first, or to do a little bit of discovery to see if that camera does have a CGI string at a 640 by 480 resolution. I can say that if you do have a Dahua camera, it will not work with this system. In our case, we have Advanced cameras. We're going to hit save. The only other proviso with this is, you can probably see from the string, is this is looking at the second stream from this particular camera. So we have already pre-programmed the second stream to be an MJPEG stream at 640 by 480. If we go back here, immediately it should tell us that it's online. Let's just add a few more. Main entry, again generic, put in our IP address, our password, save. Actually, I might just leave it at those two for now. We need to then, after or actually just before that, if we go up here and go to video, we should see both those cameras now that we've added onto our system. if we go back to configuration, advanced, verification, we need to add what we call a verification zone. I'm going to add 2 of them, and I'm going to call them the same as the camera. So car park. Where does this verification zone get its audio? I have 3 keypads on the system, 2 of which have got microphones, reception and warehouse. I'm going to pick the reception microphone as it's closer to the car park than the warehouse. And then I'm going to select the car park video and hit save. For this other one, I'm just going to call it entry. And let's assume that was in the warehouse. And the main entry was the warehouse entry. And we'll hit save. This verification zone now allows us to associate it with zones, keypads, and doors. So let's now have a look at our inputs that we had. Our front door, entry exit. Go to attributes. Somewhere here, in our case down the bottom here, is our verification zone. Let's pick entry and hit save. Anytime this zone goes into alarm, the associated video and audio for this verification zone will be sent to the control room, uploaded to the cloud, or sent to your app. So we can do that for an input. We can associate it with a keypad. So let's look at our warehouse keypad. From here also, pick our verification, and in our case that would be entry, and hit save. For our door controllers, we can't directly add a verification zone within the door, but the door obviously is associated with a read switch on the door. So in our case, our zone 11. If we go to our inputs here and then look for our door controller or our door read, we can then associate it with video and audio as well. For any alarms that are current, you will see that information in the alarm screen. You will see pre, post and current alarms with the audio in this window if there was an alarm currently active. Certainly, as we've seen, go to the video to see those cameras as they are. These cameras will also be shown on the app, can also be shown from your cloud portal, and can be shown in the ComXT control room software that would be located in a monitoring center. So from our advanced tab, we've now gone through our mapping gates and our verification. While we're here, let's have a quick look at our file menu. This is where we can upgrade our firmware in the panel, upgrade our peripheral firmware, or perhaps add additional languages so you can operate the keypad in your home language. The way you do this is simply choose a file. In our case, all of our firmware will look like this. It will come with a language folder, a panel firmware folder, and a peripheral firmware folder, and the notes on the changes or improvements made with the software. So panel firmware, in some cases there might be a variety of options. We've already got 3.11.1, which is the latest version, so it's from upgrade 3.8 and later. We can go open and then upgrade. In our case, it's going to tell us that our new version is exactly the same as our current version, but we could confirm and re-download the software again. Literally only takes a number of seconds, and then you can log back into the panel with your new upgraded firmware. The latest firmware can always be upgraded on any version or age of SPC Panel that's out there. You do exactly the same with your peripheral firmware. So go back a couple of steps to peripheral, highlight that, open, then upgrade, and it will list all of your modules, their current firmware, and the upgraded firmware. So you can see we're already at the latest there. If we did want a language file, we do follow exactly the same process. We can, from the file manager, download a backup of our configuration to our download folder on our computer. We can use that same configuration folder file to upload the firmware and upgrade the backup and whatever changes that we've made. We also have the ability with SPC that, let's just say you're going out on site and you need to make a couple of changes. For the two things that I would do would be to download a copy of the current configuration to your hard drive, and I would also use the option here that says backup, and it backs up a copy of the program onto the panel itself. And we can see here that our backup system configuration file was just saved, or the date that it was saved, to the panel. So it is possible to restore from the backup that's already on the panel. So a nice little scenario there. We can download and upload any of the user data that's in the system. We can upload a logo that's shown on the slimline or the compact keypad. We can also download or upload our calendar data if it is, easier to do that than to program it within the panel. And of course, language files here. As I've said on our previous video, the compact and the slimline keypad can also talk to you. They can have audio, and that can be computer generated. It could be a recorded message or recorded messages that you've done. This is where you upload the file. To do that, the audio is generated and can be manipulated in the SPC Connect Pro software, which is freely downloadable, and you can also generate your logo within that software as well. Fast Programmer doesn't exist anymore, and you can either default or just restart your alarm system from here. So based on that, that's all we needed to cover today. So certainly appreciate your time, and we'll see you on the next one.